It's time for The Box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky. The Box is also brought to you by the fine folks at Grayson Sanitation. Grab a cold beverage, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show as we spend the next hour or so looking at the wonderful world of sports. And now, here's your host for The Box, Tim Carver.
Thank you very much, Jenna. Welcome into The Box with Tim, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky, a special Corona Quarantine edition, which may not be so special because we may have several of those here over the next few weeks, months, years, who knows. This coronavirus thing has just gone out of control. And so here in the early going, I've decided at the behest of my wife, that having Parkinson's disease and diabetes and being a cancer survivor, it might be best that I stay at home for a little while. So I wouldn't really call it a self-quarantine, a social distancing to the extreme might be a better way of putting it. I'm not getting out unless absolutely positively necessary, and just hanging out here doing my little thing here in the Dean Fig Studios, high atop the beautiful city of Grayson, Kentucky. And, we're doing our audiobooks, doing our commercials, and producing a podcast. And, boy, today is going to be an absolute dandy. Very little talk from me right now because we're going to get straight to our commercial break, and we're going to come back with the Hall of Fame broadcaster, my good buddy Marty Brennaman, formerly, and sad to say, formerly, of the Cincinnati Reds, and we're going to talk about a whole lot of stuff, take some listener questions in our special Ask Marty section, and it's going to be a good time. So stay tuned. We'll be right back to The Box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky.
It's produced locally, and it's top quality. Many of you are putting those two items at the top of your list of priorities when you're making decisions about purchases these days. Should be the same with beef jerky. That's why we partner with Mingy Beef Jerky. It's better because it's hand-cut from a quality piece of solid beef, never chopped or formed like you get from other companies. Go to MingyBeefJerky.com to see the story of this locally owned and operated company from my hometown in Paris, Kentucky. It's the best. Trust me on that one.
Welcome back to The Box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky, and special edition this week, special episode, stepping in to the press box to talk to a dear old friend, and in midst of all the chaos, I got to ask Marty Brennaman, how we looking?
Well, we're looking as well as it can be expected, Fig. I think everybody's having to deal with situations that they've never had to deal with in their lives, no matter how old they are, but there's nothing that we individually can do except to heed the warnings of people who know more about this than we do. And hopefully our actions, if we're responsible citizens of this great country, we will help to minimize the damage and probably bring a resolution to it quicker than it normally would have.
No doubt. And I guess baseball had to make the decision they made. I know it made a lot of folks mad, but I mean, goodness, we're dealing with stuff that we've never had to deal with before. So I think Manfred and the folks made a pretty good choice. What do you think?
Yeah, they had no choice. But as soon as one league took a radical approach, and that is to either end the seasons like the NHL and the NBA did, then it was a domino effect. You couldn't very well not do something.
Right.
Once one or more of the major professional leagues had made a decision, baseball had no choice whether they wanted to or not. And naturally, at this time of the year, and I agree, you right now you're postponing the beginning.
Right.
Whether or not, quite honestly, if you believe, and I don't think you can, because whether you read a local paper, or you watch a local TV station or radio station, or you go online or read one of the major newspapers in the country, everybody seemingly has a different opinion as to when this stuff is going to be under control.
Right.
I read this morning that one person is saying that it could go into the spring of 2021. So you're talking a year.
Right.
I've seen other reports that it won't be controlled from a health perspective until sometime in August. Well, I got to be honest with you. If it doesn't occur until then, I would have to question whether or not baseball would be played, period, in 2020.
Well, what needs to happen before a season can even start? I mean, even if they say in a month, okay, everybody can get back out and resume, what has to happen before you can even have a season?
Well, you're going to have about 3 weeks of players amping it up again and trying to get back to as close as they can be to opening a season without fear of doing any kind of physical damage. I know there's been reports that, and I think this is probably accurate, that whenever they open, assuming they do, you could have rosters at the beginning of the season that would number as many as 30 players. They've already mandated that the season, had this not even happened, that there would be one additional player added to every roster. So they would have opened the season with 26 players. I would say 30, and the 4 would be pitchers, just to take the load off the arms of starting pitchers that might not quite be ready. Right. And you have to protect the health of these guys. And so I could see that happening. And I think no matter when the season opens, if it does, that we'll have more than 26 players on the opening day rosters.
I don't think people realize that these guys are fine-tuned athletes, and they can't just sit around for a month and do nothing, and then, boom, you're playing baseball. I mean, that's why there's a spring training, right?
Right. Like I said, they'd have to have probably 3 weeks. They'd all go back to their respective spring training sites, and whoever is responsible for laying out the kind of program that would be needed to get them game ready within 21 days would have to map out some type of plan. And I'm sure there would be differences according to which team you're talking about, but the end result and the goal would be to have guys ready to play. But I don't see how they could, even if the season were to open around June the 1st, you'd still have to give them probably 3 weeks, which means that you would have to make some type of decision the first 10 days or so in May. And I don't know that realistically that's going to happen.
Let's just put on a cap and say, okay, the season's going to start and it's going to move forward. What does this Reds team look like? I know it's kind of hard right now because of what's going on, but let's just with the addition of Moustakas and Castellanos and the Japanese Akiyama, I think his name is. What will the team look like if we get to play this season?
Well, it's going to be a very good team. I mean, it's a team for me that doesn't have a whole lot of weakness. I think that the ownership and the baseball people, Dick Williams and Nick Kroll, have answered the bell, bringing in Moustakas and Castellanos and adding a left-hander, Wade Miley, to fill out the rotation. I think their rotation on paper will be as good as any in this division. And I don't know that there is one rotation on any particular club in the league that would be categorized as being a whole lot better. So if these guys are healthy, with the offense obviously improved in a major way with Moustakas and Nick Castellanos to go with the people that they've already had in place, this is going to be a good team. It's going to be a team that will score runs, which they had trouble doing last year. It's going to be a team that I think will do a whole lot better in hitting with runners in scoring position, which they did not do well last year. So I like this team. I truly do. I think this team can be an impact player in the division if the season's played.
I know at the beginning of, sometime in January, I guess, or February, you and Amanda flew out to Washington and drove to spring training. What was that like?
Well, we drove to spring training from Cincinnati last year.
Right.
But this year we flew to Portland and rented a car at the airport, drove down the Oregon coast and the Northern California coast. We stayed in 2 lighthouses. We have an affinity for lighthouses, she and I do, that we developed a few years ago. And I mean, if this world and specifically this country ever gets back to normalcy, there'll be a time in the next couple of years, I think, when we've talked about this and driving around the entire coast of Lake Michigan.
Wow.
Which I went online. It's about 1,100 miles, and check out all the lighthouses that are on that lake, which are numerous.
Mm-hmm.
But we stayed 3 nights in Carmel on the Monterey Peninsula, and we stayed 2 nights in one of the great secrets of the country, and that's Santa Barbara, California, which is about as neat a town as I've ever been in. And then from there, we headed southeast and eventually ended up in Goodyear. We took about 10 days and really had a great trip. It was a sensational trip. Going to places I'd never been before, because all my travel has been baseball travel for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm getting a chance to go places I've never been before. And I would say to people listening, if they've never done the Oregon coast, do yourself a favor, because it is just absolutely breathtakingly beautiful.
Yeah, I saw some of the pictures that you put up on Instagram and Amanda had put up on Facebook, and I couldn't believe, I didn't know that existed out west. I mean, it was just beautiful.
It's unreal. It's clean. It's the foliage is just beautiful. The pines and we saw the big trees in Northern California. It was spectacular. There was no question about it.
Well, maybe you could get you a reality show, Marty and Amanda Travel America or something. That would
do that. I'd do that in a minute.
You'd be great.
And Amanda does all the driving. I don't do any driving. She does it all.
Well, you could do all the sightseeing, so that's even better, right?
That's it. Well, like I said to many people, I'm convinced that in her previous life she was a driver of an 18 over-the-road truck.
She can get you anywhere you want to go.
She can drive now. Believe me when I tell you, she can drive.
You arrived at Goodyear. I know last year before the season, actually, you were my first guest on this show, and we talked about what the last season was going to be like, and what would you miss it? And you told me then that you wouldn't really know until spring training of this year. What was spring training like without being in the booth?
No, I passed the test, man, with flying colors. I did not miss it one time. I did not miss sitting in that booth broadcasting a baseball game. I've had people come up to me, and Amanda and I would go to the ballpark and watch the game, and people would come up and say, "Boy, I bet you wish you were up there in that radio booth." And I'd say, "No, on the contrary, I don't." And I said, the one thing I can do now that I've never been able to do in 46 previous springs, and that's get up and go home anytime I want to. And quite honestly, I never saw the 6th inning of any game we went to in spring training. I'd watch 5 innings and we'd get up and go home. So I didn't miss it. If spring training indeed was test number 1, then I passed that baby. I'm not worried about the regular season. I'm good. I made the right decision at the right time. And I've never looked back. Fortunately, I'm still connected with the club and making appearances for them and doing things such as that. But in terms of broadcasting baseball, 46 years is enough. I'm done with that.
And, last year, obviously, in just about every city, if not every city you went to as your last time, they paid some sort of tribute to you. And how did that feel? I know you're not a guy that's really big on that kind of stuff. You really wanted to just step away a couple of years ago at the end of the season and say that's it. But it had to feel good and feel kind of nice to have those folks recognize your career in baseball.
It did. I mean, I was extremely appreciative, but in most cases, very uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And, they would put up on the board the last time that I was in a particular city, recognizing my 46 years and all the other things that go into that. And it was fine. I definitely appreciated it, but I would just as soon have been allowed to just walk away. Like you said, I didn't feel like that anybody owed me anything. And in reality, I feel like if one was owed to the other, it was me owing them, especially here in this town with the way the fans have treated me for 46 years. And so that type of recognition was unnecessary for me. But at the same time, I certainly appreciated it and look back on it with nothing but good memories.
Other than Cincinnati, was there a place that you kind of thought, or was felt more welcome, or I don't want to say more welcome, maybe that they treated you a little bit better here and there on your last day? I know you had an awful special gift from Chicago. That had to feel pretty good.
Yeah, that was the most unique thing I got, ironically, from a franchise that I've had my problems with in the past. And it's really, in fact, Amanda took it out yesterday to get it framed, and that was a rectangular piece of metal with the number 46 on it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, in reference to my 46 years as a broadcaster with the Reds, and it was an actual plate of metal that came out of the hand-operated scoreboard above the bleachers in center field at Wrigley Field. Mm-hmm. I mean, all the way down to the fact that there was bird poop on it. It was legitimate. It was and I told Amanda when she took it out, I said, make sure these people that are going to frame this thing understand now, I don't want it cleaned. Right. I want it exactly as it was.
Bird poop
and it
all.
Was very special. They had not done that to but two other people. And you know, those guys that do the Cub games, like most of the other teams, Pat Hughes and Ron Coomer and Len Casper and Jimmy Deshaies on television, are buddies of mine. And mm-hmm. and I was honored that they would go to that extent and come up with such a unique gift. San Francisco, which is my favorite broadcast crew in all of baseball, and John Miller and David Fleming on radio. Well, they go back and forth, and Dwayne Kuiper and Mike Krukow. Mm-hmm. They've really been close buddies of mine for a lot of years, and they had an artist rendering of me based on a picture taken 40 years ago, mm-hmm. sunglasses on and sport coat and long hair, which obviously I don't have now. And it was nice that they would do, but everybody was great. I mean, right. I can't, it'd be hard to pick one out over the other. It was just a nice display of appreciation, and in many cases, great affection that those guys in whatever city it might have been had for me. Cleveland was great. Tom Hamilton and all those guys up there. It was just a nice run, and I think all of them knew I came away with a tremendously high level of appreciation for their efforts.
And then the last day at Cincinnati, I wanted to be in attendance, but at the time I was a little under the weather, fighting a little colon cancer there. But I watched the whole thing, and to see that many people stick around and the appreciation that city had for you, that had to be special. I know you were uncomfortable there, but that had to be pretty special.
Well, it far exceeded anything I ever anticipated. I never expected that, and I'll forever be indebted to Phil Castellini and Karen Forgas and all the rest of the people that Zach Bonkowski, people like that put that thing together, because it was the last 3 days. The club ended the year that weekend in Pittsburgh, but I told them months ago I didn't want to go to Pittsburgh. I wanted to end it where it started, mm-hmm. Here in town. And so I did the last series at home against Milwaukee, and they had different things planned every day. One of the days I worked with son Tom mm-hmm. for an entire 9 innings on the radio. We should not done that in forever. Mm-hmm. And we did 2 games outside, working with Tom in one and Brantley with the other. And then the whole final day was just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And again, I think the club did a masterful job of putting a lot of working parts together and making it happen in the manner in which it did. My entire family was here. My daughter Dawn and her family came in from Chicago, and of course Tom and Ashley both live here. So all of my family was here, and Amanda's mom and dad were here, and it was just a kind of a cool way to go out.
It was phenomenal, and I think one of my favorite things that whole weekend was when Uke came in and spent some time with you. That guy is just a legend, and I thought that was probably as entertaining radio when you and Uke were on the air was about as good as anything I'd heard in a long time.
Well, I appreciate that, and I he and I have been such good friends for years, and mm-hmm. The fact that he would come in was about as high a compliment as I think anybody paid me, because he doesn't travel much anymore.
Right.
He'll go to St. Louis because he played there. He'll go to Atlanta because he played there, and that's it. He doesn't go anywhere else. And for him to come into Cincinnati just because it was my last 3 games, I was just overwhelmed by the fact that he wanted to be here for it, and then coming on the radio like he did, and I thought the radio with the two of us together was magical.
Oh, it was
for
gold.
People that, and he and I just had a great relationship for a lot of years, and I have great respect for him as a broadcaster and as a person, and he's one of the funniest human beings that ever lived. And I tell people that people constantly come up to me and say, is he as funny off the air as he is on? I said, he's probably funnier off the air.
Well, he could probably say some things off the air.
You hit the nail on the head right there, pal.
Well, I've always said if you want to see quintessential Bob Uecker, just YouTube his Major League Baseball Hall of Fame induction ceremony. It was one of the funniest things.
Fig, not only that, he did that off the top of his head.
That's what I was told. He
did not write his speech out.
Yeah.
Everything was spontaneous.
I think you told me that once when we were talking about that, and that just makes it even funnier and even better. Folks, if you haven't seen it, it is one of the best.
Go on YouTube. You can find it on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, and just type in Bob Uecker Hall of Fame speech, and it's the best 20 minutes you'll spend of your day, especially right now with all the doom and gloom.
That's correct.
You will laugh and laugh for a long time.
Yeah, it's really special.
I know you know, when we talked last year, this year was supposed to be a time of a lot of travel for you and Amanda. Are those plans kind of on hold right now?
No, they definitely on hold. We were, we were going to go to, we went spring training. You know, we came back last Wednesday night, and then all hell broke loose last Thursday.
Right.
I mean, we got home. If it was a matter of being able to get home under normal circumstances, we did that. And then everything broke last Thursday. It seems like it's been 3 years ago this last week.
It does.
I know. And then we're going to be here through opening day, and we're going to go to Sarasota. We own a place down there in Siesta Key. We're going to go down there for 2 weeks. That's off. We were going to go to, I say were because nothing has been definite, but I think it's pretty obvious. So we were going to fly to Rome in May and get on a cruise ship and go to 3 or 4 ports in Italy and 3 or 4 ports in Greece, and then stay around for another 4 or 5 days. But I'm sure that's off. No notification officially has come down the line. And I guess the one trip we're holding out on is in late August. We were going to go to Glacier National Park, and I'd like to think that everything will be back to normal and we'll be able to do that, but I don't think we're banking on it. So, everybody, God knows the last thing I'm going to do is complain, because right now as we talk, we're healthy, and is there concern about this thing in this country? Yeah, you're not kidding. I've never lived through anything like this, and I don't think anybody else is listening to this podcast has ever lived through anything like this. And so if it inconveniences us as far as travel is concerned, it's the way it is. We'll just spend the summer at home, and then when things get better, we'll take the trips later that we plan to do now. Mm-hmm. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah. I mean, like I was telling you earlier, but before we started, I've got my grandson, and he normally goes to school 2 days a week. Well, of course, we're not doing that now, but we're having a great time. I'm teaching him some old games like Old Maid and checkers and things along those lines at 5 years old. And he looked at me the other day and he said, "Poppy, did you do this when you were a kid?" And I got to thinking, there were times, especially in those winters of 78, 79 in Eastern Kentucky, we didn't go anywhere for a month. And
that's
so
correct.
You take care of things like that. You weren't able to you weren't even out to go out and sleigh ride. It was so cold and 3 feet of snow and so forth. So
that's right.
You make do with what you got and make the best of a bad situation. I think we could all learn from some of the old timers in that situation.
Yeah, no question. I mean, and complaining about it doesn't change anything.
Nothing.
It just makes you feel miserable just complaining And so you just live with it. That's all. I mean,
Right.
I've been outside one time in the last 5 days, and I'm in the high risk group,
Right.
and so it would be stupid of me to go out and mix it up with a lot of friends and people when I'm really rolling the dice and not liking in a high percentage of the time what the result's going to be. So you get a little stir crazy. Yeah, you do. But then if you do, you walk outside and spend 10 or 15 minutes outside if the weather's decent, and then you come on back inside and you do it as many times as you have to. But I mean, we're all confined to a certain extent and varying degrees of confinement, and whatever that might be, you just have to learn to live with it.
That's exactly right. You can walk over to that jukebox and play A7 and have a big time.
You got a good point there, pal. That's correct.
We're going to step away for a break for our sponsor, Mingy Beef Jerky. When we come back, I put out on social media that Marty was going to be with us, and we're going to play a little bit of Ask Marty to take him back to his days with the Reds on radio. We'll be back in just a moment to the box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky.
If you know somebody that's in the military, let me tell you how to make their day. Send them some packages of Mingy Beef Jerky. I'm told it's one of the most requested items by our troops who are from Kentucky. You got plenty of choices: regular, sweet and hot, bourbon flavored, teriyaki, and there are now Mingy Beef Jerky meat sticks. Mingy's the best because it's hand cut from a quality piece of solid beef, not chopped or formed like you're going to find in other beef jerky. Mingy Beef Jerky, it is the best. Pick some up today.
Folks, I can't tell you enough how much I appreciate Frank and Travis Rice at Grayson Sanitation for helping us out here on the box. And if you have any need whatsoever to get rid of some garbage, rubbish, trash, crap, whatever you want to call it, you give those guys a call at 474-5850 here in Northeast Kentucky. They'll bring a dumpster right to your front door if you want them to. And just really appreciate those guys. They do a fantastic job, and very big sponsors of our show, and very much sports-minded sponsors in our entire community and all of Northeast Kentucky. So 474-5850. Give Travis and Frank a call, and if Robin answers the phone, you can talk to her too. Welcome back into the box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky. Good friend Marty Brennaman joining us today. And Marty, before we even go any further, I just want to thank you. You were the first person that took a chance on this podcast with me, and you are still by far the most listens we've had. And I just want to say thank you for your friendship, especially over the past year. It's been a rough one for me, and you've been right there checking in on me, and I appreciate it.
No problem. No thanks necessary, Tim. You and I have known each other for a long, long time.
Do you care to play a little bit of Ask Marty with me?
Go ahead.
All right. From Twitter, Kentucky Blue Girl 362435 wants to know, have you ever considered writing a book about your time with the Reds?
Well, yeah, I've considered it, and I've been contacted by people, and I'm just simply not ready to sit down and write a book.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a lot of time, and maybe down the road I will. I think I've got a lot of things to say and a lot of interesting stories to tell, although I can tell you that a book has already come out.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, with my permission. An attorney here in town, and maybe the biggest Reds fan alive, named Randy Freaking, who works closely with the Reds Community Fund, and he has put together a book in conjunction with a young man by the name of Mike Ziliox, who has a Twitter, or had one, at Titanic Struggle.
Titanic Struggle. I listen. I mean, I looked at that a lot. He used to put your best lines of each game up on Twitter.
Well, they have put together a book entitled "The Best of Marty Brennaman."
Oh, that's
in
great.
fact, I just got copies of it yesterday. The proceeds are going to go to the Reds Community Fund and the Dragonfly Foundation.
Great. And
it's pretty entertaining. I never realized I had so much crap to lay on people over the course of 46 years of some of the things. He's broken it down into like 9 innings, and they deal with probably, and this was all Mike's doing, because Mike, I think he listened to something like 90% of the games that I did. he works for Cincinnati Bell. How in the world he was able to do it and juggle that with a family and a job, I don't know. But the book is pretty entertaining. And for those who have listened over the years and have heard all the sayings that I've come up with, it's all in here, and he gives examples of it. The book's pretty good, and I guess it's out now. But as I said, it's entitled "At Titanic Struggle: the Best of Marty Brennaman," and it's not bad.
We will find where we can get that, and I'll put that up on the website, and we'll
very good. We appreciate that.
Sure.
As I said, the proceeds benefit the Reds Community Fund and the Dragonfly Foundation, and it's a softcover book, and it's pretty good. It really is.
I've actually followed that Twitter account forever, and he actually put out some when he was working. Some of us who were listening to the game would actually message him. That's how he got some of them, I know, would message him and say, Marty just said this. And if it passed his muster, then he would tweet it on out for everybody. But that's very entertaining. I will definitely get a copy of that book, and we will promote that, especially, because we're buddies, but because of what it's going to benefit for sure. Those are two great foundations.
Yeah.
Michelle Stevens asked, Marty, what is the best thing about being retired?
Well, the best thing about being retired is now that I'm pretty much operating on my schedule and mine and Amanda's schedule rather than operating on somebody else's. There was very little about my job that I did not like. If there was anybody that had a job that was as close to being perfect, it was mine, because I enjoyed broadcasting baseball. I enjoyed all the things that came with that, but at the same time, I've told the story a million times. When Joe retired, he was physically unable to do a lot of the things that he wanted to do after he had retired, and that made such an impression upon me that I decided then that when the day came, and at that time I had no idea when that would be, but when I decided to do it, then I would do it when I was healthy enough to do the things that Amanda and I had talked about doing once I retired. And my health is good, and we can travel or we cannot travel. But whatever we do or don't do will not, right now, knock on wood, a factor would not be whether or not I'm healthy enough to do that. And so I don't know that there's one thing that I like more than anything, other than the fact that I'm operating on my own schedule now, and I can do what I want to do. And if there's something I don't want to do, I don't do it.
There you go. If you don't want to go to St. Louis, you don't have to go to St. Louis, right?
Correct. That's right. Correct.
Tim, a good friend from down in Lexington, Tim Kennedy, asked, how much better will your golf game be now that you're retired and can play when you want to?
It's already gotten better. I played out in Arizona 4 times, and I played very well 3 times. And I'd be playing right now if the weather would cooperate, because that's the one thing that I think if you are a golfer, that's one thing you can do now,
right?
Without being overly concerned. Although the golf courses have implemented some rules,
right?
I know the one I play at you can't have a partner in your golf cart. Everybody has to drive a golf cart by themselves, and but aside from that, if the weather gets good, I'll be out there playing. But I'll certainly play more once things return to normal than I would have had I still been working.
Now, I will say this, as a young man listening to you back in the 70s and early 80s, I would never in my wildest dreams have thought Marty Brennaman would be a golfer, because you used to give Joe down the road pretty hard.
I did. I really did. That was back in the day when I was trying to be a sun god, and Sparky and I would go out and lay in the sun every day on the road for 2 or 3 hours. And then in the mid '90s, my 2 oldest kids, Tom and Dawn, gave me a gift certificate to buy golf clubs and take lessons, get off my rear end and start doing something. And then I got the bug, and from that day forward, I've been a big advocate of the game. I love the game. I wish I was a better player, but that's okay. I still, that doesn't take away from the interest that I have in going out and playing. And I'll continue to play until the day comes when I'm physically unable to.
But that's a great thing about golf, is you can play and up until way up in years, and you're playing the course. You're not playing a bunch of young whippersnappers, so you can play as long as you can.
That's exactly right. That's exactly. And if you play from the tee box, that's commensurate with your game. I know guys that are 20 handicaps that are playing at tee boxes that would measure out 6,800 yards. You can't play there. That's not where you can play, and that's not macho. That's just stupid.
Right.
It really is. I'm not kidding. I'm amazed at guys that say, well, I can play with the big boys. The hell you can't. No, you can't. And so I play from the senior tees, or I play from the up tees that will allow me to go out and play and have a good time and be happy with the score that I post at the end of 18 holes.
Right. And I've played with guys that were really good that wanted to play from the women's tees just so they could, lower their score. So
well, something's wrong with that too.
You're exactly right.
I know it.
Play the tees that you're supposed to play, and it can be a very, very enjoyable game.
No question.
Gary Jordan from here in Grayson asked, is there any chance, I think I know the answer to this, but is there any chance you might do a few games on Fox Ohio TV this season, if there is a season?
Nope, not at all. Not at all. I made it perfectly clear to the club that there is not, to my knowledge today, and I hate to say never because inevitably something happens,
right? But
there is nothing that I'm aware of that would ever make me walk back into a radio or TV booth and broadcast a baseball game. I can't imagine what that would be. I know I don't need that. And I say that with one certainty. I don't need that for any self-fulfillment. I don't need that to prove that I can still do it.
Right.
Because I think I could be away for 5 years and go in and broadcast a baseball game. It's just like riding a bike. If you do it and you're good at it, that's not going to leave you. But I don't need to go back in and do it because I need to have some type of self-fulfillment in terms of broadcasting the game. There were people with the club when I first formulated the idea of doing it. Someone one day casually in a meeting that we were having about it said, well, you come back next year, meaning this season here, and do 25 or 30 games. And I said, you people obviously don't know the definition of the word retirement. I said, for one, the most important thing is I'm not, that would have made the whole thing last year a complete sham.
Right.
For me to retire and be the recipient of a lot of nice things and then turn around and say, oh, by the way, I'm going to do 35 games next year. And the other part of that is I'm not going to come in and take games away. Right. From Tommy Thrall or whoever it might be, games that they should be doing. And Tommy Thrall he doesn't need my shadow hanging over his head. And going into a radio booth on any date, knowing, well, he's coming back and he's going to do 4 games next week. So he's never completely out of the minds of Reds fans. I don't, that's not fair to him. And so no, there are no circumstances that I'm aware of that I will ever go back into a booth again to broadcast a baseball game. And I think you make a great point there. And knowing Tommy a little bit as I do, he would probably be great if you came in. But as you said, that would not be fair to that young man or whoever. It just would not be fair for them to like you said, Marty would still be around. So it's never going to be his team, or he's never going to be that guy until. And I think it was great at the end of your career, as your last little bit on the radio was asking Cincinnati to open their arms to Tommy. He's a great broadcaster, and so he needed. I don't say he needed it, but it was kind of like you passing the torch over. I think that's something that will help folks to accept him more. And I think that acceptance would be delayed if you kept coming back and doing games. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Very well put. Let's ask a question. And I do know the answer to this one, but some people may not. I know you and I have talked about this several times, actually. Keith Murphy wants to know, what was the best World Series teams the Reds fielded in your era? Well, that's 75 and 76. Your favorite team is? 1990. Yeah, 1990 is my favorite team. That's a team that nobody picked to win anything, and that was ironically the only season up until now. Well, not even now. The verdict is still out on this one, but it's the only season among the 46 that I worked that the team opened on the road. There had been a strike in spring training, and they finally got the collective bargaining agreement reached, and so the spring training was extended into when the regular season would have started. And so the regular season, they picked a date and said, this is when the season's going to start. We're just going to pick up from that date where the teams would have been anyway.
Right.
And the date they chose was a date that they had the Reds in Houston to play the Astros in that opening game. Barry Larkin triple in the 10th or 11th inning to break a tie and carry the Reds to a win. And they went on to never vacate first place in winning the division, and then of course beat Pittsburgh in the postseason, and then went on to beat Oakland in 4 games in the World Series. Greatest chemistry on that club of any team I was around, and it transcended whether you were white or black or Hispanic. It made no difference. There were no cliques on that club. Everybody had everybody's back. Everybody loved one another, and it was a team led by a future Hall of Famer and Barry Larkin, and you had Eric Davis and Joe Oliver and Glenn Braggs and Billy Hatcher and Mariano Duncan and Ronnie Oster and Todd Benzinger and Hal Morris. The list just went on and on. Chris Sabo, and it was a great collection of young athletes, and so that team will always be my favorite team.
Did the Nasty Boys define that team, just their grit and determination? Would that be a good way to say that?
I think if you had to pick a poster, quote unquote, a poster child,
right?
This would be poster children.
Mm-hmm.
They would be the ones, Rob Dibble, Norm Charlton, Randy Myers, because they changed the way the other team play their game.
Mm-hmm.
The manager of another team, if he had a chance to score in the first inning, he was bunting a runner over to try and get a runner to second base in the first inning, simply to try and get the lead early,
right,
and hope to hold it. Because if he was able to do that, then he took the Nasty Boys completely out of the equation. If the Reds had the lead going to the 6th or 7th inning, more often than not, it was over with.
Right.
Because Lou had those 3 guys, and they were interchangeable parts. Dibble could close one night, Charlton could close the next night, Myers the next night. All 3 could pitch long relief. It was just an amazing collection of arms with those 3 guys. And the other part of that is that all 3 were a little bit crazy. And they were not afraid to throw at hitters. They were not afraid to knock down hitters. And if you had a problem with it, then they would meet you halfway.
Exactly right.
And so they would have been on the poster. ESPN or MLB, one of the two did a whole documentary on the Nasty Boys.
MLB had it on this past week, actually.
That shows you the respect that baseball as an industry had for what those 3 guys did.
And they went all out. They went all out.
And the other part of it is that they had the right guy managing the club. Who came at the perfect time. He was loud, he was profane, he was bombastic, and he was aggressive. And he told those guys in day one in Plant City, when they gathered the first day of the spring training in Florida, you guys are good enough to go a long way, and you have the talent. We have all the necessary ingredients, and now you got to go out and play, and I'm not going to stand for anything less than the best that you've got.
Right.
And they heeded his words, and they went out and they played, and they accomplished at that time the unthinkable, and that was that they became world champions when nobody thought they could.
And I think and I don't know who they were playing, but one play kind of defined the Nasty Boys for me, not necessarily pitching, but I just remember Norm Charlton in his in his warm-up jacket, barreling over a catcher at home plate and knocking the catcher over, standing up and emphatically stepping on home plate. And I thought, man, this guy is a nut. No pitcher does that. And it kind of just, to me, that kind of defined who those guys were.
Well, that not only that, it was on national television because it was on Sunday Night Baseball. And he ran down Mike Scioscia.
Is that who it was? Okay.
Who was catching for the Dodgers, who was one of the toughest guys in the game.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran Scioscia over at home plate. The game was played at Riverfront. And that pretty much, you're right, that play right there epitomized what that team was all about. And it was a fun year. Nobody enjoyed that year more than I did because, as I said, I had such great affection for so many of the guys on that club and still do today. And to see them accomplish what they did when it was completely unexpected was really a lot of fun.
That's great. Miss Red 1999 asks, is there any chance you might do a podcast in the future?
Not right now because it's too constraining. I just don't want to devote time to anything like that right now.
Right.
I do a radio show with Tracy Jones, which we've done for years,
mm-hmm.
and that's going to continue. In fact, it'll begin on Monday. And we're going to start it even though there's no baseball to be played. I think we have enough material that we can carry through as long as it takes before we get back to playing baseball. It's a very popular show on our flagship station, WLW Radio,
mm-hmm.
and so we're going to continue doing that. But I don't think so. I've been on a number of them. Of course, being on yours for the second time, and Jim Day has done a great job in doing a lot of podcasts, and Bob Kaboyan, who was part of the Bob and Tom team for many years, he does one. So. But I don't think so. Not right now. I don't want to have to be. I don't want to have an obligation that I have to do something
right
now. I think, I think that's a natural feeling for people who retire after a long time in whatever business that they were in.
Right. I agree totally. Roger Moore asked, "Do you believe too much is being made of the Houston Astros sign stealing scandal?" And do you think,
I don't.
Do you think the players should be punished at all?
Absolutely. Now I understand how tough it is to do that. I've been very critical of the commissioner of baseball. I'm not a big fan of Rob Manfred. I think he handled the whole thing very poorly. But I think next to the Black Sox scandal of 1919, when the White Sox threw the World Series and the Reds won it, I think this is the second worst thing that's ever happened to the game.
I agree.
Worse than Pete Rose and gambling, worse than steroids. And I would defend the commissioner in trying to penalize the players. It's hard to do. A lot of guys are no longer there. They're with other teams. So that part I understand. What bothers me is right now there's nothing that's happened with the Red Sox. Now I know he's got more important things on his mind right now, given the coronavirus pandemic. But at the same time, he promised a resolution, an announcement about the Boston thing that was to have come 2 weeks ago this past Friday.
Right.
And nothing has happened yet. I was just stunned by the whole thing. And I know there are people that think that this is just the tip of the iceberg, that once we return to normalcy in this world, that there will be other teams that are implicated. I don't believe that, because I think there was enough time before this coronavirus thing took over that had there been other teams implicated and doing the same things that the Astros and the Red Sox were doing, that would have already surfaced.
Right.
So I don't believe, I may be naive, but I simply don't believe there were any other teams doing it. The Red Sox thing, the Red Sox opted to take the bull by the horns, and they fired their manager, Alex Cora. Alex Cora was the architect of it when he was a bench coach in Houston.
Right.
And then he went to the Red Sox to manage, and he was the architect of it there. He should never be allowed to work in the game of Major League Baseball again.
Wholeheartedly agree with that.
Well, I mean, if you're going to continue to keep Pete Rose out on the outside looking in, then you cannot ever allow Alex Cora to work in baseball again. So we'll see, but I don't think that too much has been made of it. On the contrary, if you can steal signs, and every team does this, you have more often than not, you've got a player or you've got a coach that has a unique ability to watch a pitcher and realize with some little tick or change in his motion or his mannerisms on the mound before a particular pitch,
Right.
that a particular pitch is going to come. If you can do that simply by the visual, your own vision, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly.
There's not. That's why when you get a runner at second base,
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
they change signs. They
Right.
change the sequence of signs, knowing that that guy could possibly steal a sign and relay it to the hitter. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
Because you're not using any kind of electronic device, a monitor or whatever it might be, to let hitters know the pitch is coming. And I have no problem. That's been going on since the game was invented.
Exactly.
But to do it the manner in which the Astros and the Red Sox did it, not a chance. No.
And I know there's been a lot of speculation that this has opened the door to Pete, and I think Pete actually made a pitch for getting himself reinstated. Does this make a case for Pete?
Yeah, I think it makes a case for Pete, but again, I say that with great prejudice.
Right.
I think he deserves to be there. And I've gone full cycle on this. When he was thrown out of the game back in 1989, I felt like he should never be allowed back in again. But, his time has gone by, and I think Pete has acquitted himself reasonably well. And so I think that I've thought for a long time that they should seriously consider allowing him to be eligible to go into the Hall of Fame. I think this thing has opened it all up again.
I agree.
And so we'll see what transpires once we get back to some measure of normalcy.
And I thought when the steroid scandals broke out that they should reevaluate Pete, and I think this is even worse than that. As you said, I think this is the biggest scandal to hit since 1919, and that doesn't when you're talking once a century, this needs to be looked at pretty good. No doubt.
No question. Yeah.
One last question. I've got a bunch more, but I've held you much longer than I even anticipated. But from my old Kentucky home is blue, as asked, is there a funny story from years past that you haven't told Tim that you might share with him now? That's pretty on the spot, isn't it, brother?
Yeah, I don't think so.
You've told me a bunch.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think they're all out there. It's if I ever write a book, probably will rehash a lot of the same old stuff. But
right,
when you're around one particular job for 46 years, especially in what I was involved in, excuse me, you cross paths with guys that are unforgettable characters, and oftentimes there are guys that do unforgettable things. And, then you have to determine what you can talk about and write about and what you can't.
Exactly.
There's a sign, or there used to be a sign in every clubhouse. I don't think it's there now because everybody knows it. And it went something like this: what you see here and what you hear here will stay here after you leave here. and that's the unwritten rule.
Right.
Guys talk about things, and because it becomes a brotherhood of sorts, and and things that they would never talk about publicly, and so guys that are in my business, or if you are a player, it's incumbent upon you to walk out of that clubhouse, and what you hear and saw and talked about, you don't talk about anywhere else.
Isn't it sad though that in this day and age, a lot of especially reporters and so forth don't necessarily follow that advice, and it's kind of get the scoop, and if anyone gets hurt, then be damned.
Well, I don't think as much now as it was. I think we went through a period when I came where everybody was in it together, and the guys that were beat writers, they would never ever write about a guy getting drunk and getting into a fight, or a guy straying off the marital path, or that stuff was just not written or talked about.
Right, back then,
Then,
but now,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think it's less now.
Oh, okay.
Once social media came to the forefront, it changed everything. Guys that would go out and conduct themselves the same way they did before social media, where you are in a bar or at another place that you shouldn't have been, and everybody in that place has got a cell phone with a camera on it, then you're crazy. And so I think most guys realize that whatever happened before had to change radically, and I think it did. And I don't really think that. I still think that there are certain things from a media standpoint today that are taboo, and guys that cross that line in a media sense are guys that could well be cutting their own throat, because all of a sudden now they could be ostracized. And if they're ostracized and they can't do their job because of the unwillingness of players and managers and coaches to talk to them,
Exactly.
they're going to lose their job.
Exactly.
So you have to use some measure of good sense about what you're talking about and what you're writing about.
Exactly. And, if you were in the locker room in the 80s or whenever you were in the locker room and saw something and immediately went to tell everyone in the media about it, they're not going to let you in the locker room,
No.
no matter who you are, whether you're a Hall of Fame broadcaster or not, they're probably going to shut you out. And so I think a lot of youngsters are so gung-ho to get the story out, whether it's true or not, whether they can verify it or not, and it hurts a lot of folks, and they need to be a little more careful about that these days, in my opinion. But that's
No
me.
question.
Marty, man, it's been great catching up with you. I appreciate your time. You've always been a friend, and I hope you always will be. And tell Amanda we said hello, and best wishes to you guys.
Well, we appreciate it, Tim, and you take care of yourself and stay healthy, pal.
Thank you, my friend. God bless. Goodbye.
You too.
It's produced locally and it's top quality. Many of you are putting those two items at the top of your list of priorities when you're making decisions about purchases these days. Should be the same with beef jerky. That's why we partner with Mingy Beef Jerky. It's better because it's hand cut from a quality piece of solid beef, never chopped or formed like you get from other companies. Go to MingyBeefJerky.com to see the story of this locally owned and operated company from my hometown in Paris, Kentucky. It's the best. Trust me on that one.
Wow, what a show. Certainly want to thank Marty Brennaman, the Hall of Fame broadcaster. Just a great friend and a great friend of the show. He was our very first guest when we started this bad boy. And I tell you what, he just never disappoints. Just always, he tells it like it is, which I like. And he and I discussed off the air, stuff that I didn't feel like using because it was some personal stuff, but it's just like two friends sitting down talking, and there happens to be a recorder on at the time, and that's how we look at things, and really enjoy talking with Marty. Wish him and Amanda all the best. He is also practicing social distancing to the extreme over the next couple of weeks, and just trying to get through it, as we all are. And certainly want to thank him for joining us today. I want to thank Curtis Mackley, the fine folks at Mingy Beef Jerky, Frank Travis, Robin Rice. Thank you guys there at Grayson Sanitation. I tell you what, in all this coronavirus stuff, those guys are still out on those trucks every day getting that garbage and trying to make the place clean and sanitary as best they can. So we certainly appreciate all the guys that run the trucks. Luke and all you guys, man, we appreciate all you guys for all you do to keep our city clean, and really more than just the city of Grayson. They go all over the place, and we certainly appreciate those guys for what they do. Thank you for joining us. We have started a YouTube channel. Some of you may be listening, /watching this, whatever, on YouTube. Just started that just to see how it goes. I don't know. We're going to put these up there for a little while and see if we have any interest in them. In the first couple, we've had a few, not a lot, but I guess the old YouTubers like to say like, share, and subscribe. I guess that means something to those of you who are YouTube people. So like, share, and subscribe. The Box with Tim. Let your friends and neighbors know we're on the air. We're on, we're on just about everything you can do podcast-wise. Of course, Podbean is our host server, but we're also available on all the Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We're there. We're now on YouTube. So no excuse for someone to not listen to the box if they so wish to. Now, they may have the excuse that they don't want to, and that's fine. That's good with me. But if you want to, man, there's so many ways to do so. We're trying to make it as easy as possible. So just appreciate those of you who do listen. For those of you who quite often send me a message, whether it be a text message or on Twitter or Facebook or whatever, however you choose to get with me, I really appreciate those of you who say you do enjoy the show, and we enjoy doing it for sure. And just keep listening and stay safe out there. And if you do happen to get out and about, pick up some Mingy beef jerky. That stuff will sit on the shelf for a good while. Man, it is absolutely fantastic. I'm telling you, there's so many different flavors of it now. I mean, Curtis and those folks have got that thing running well. And just about any flavor of jerky you can think of that you might like, they've got it. So if you're out and about getting gas or whatever, there are a lot of gas stations here around the Grayson area and some of the grocery stores. Just find that rack of Mingy beef jerky, pick it up, set it in the shelf. Well, if you can even make it home. When I pick up a pack, I rarely make it home without opening it up and eating about half of it. It is just that good. And so I want to thank, again, Curtis Mackley and the fine folks there at Mingy Beef Jerky, Paris, Kentucky, for taking care of us and helping us stay on the air here, especially during this time of the national shutdown due to COVID-19. Folks, stay safe out there. I sometimes make light of it, but it is a very serious situation. Be safe, be smart. Be smart, especially those of you who have been listed as, critical to get this type thing. The older folk, I'm getting there, and especially those of you who have some type of compromising health problem, just stay in unless you have to get out. Just stay in, do your thing. Listen to the box, watch some movies, read some books, play some checkers, just find some things to do. I had my grandson here this week. He's normally with us anyway, but usually on Monday and Thursdays, he's at school, and he's not in school now. So Monday and Thursday, he's with me, his poppy, and we've played checkers and trying to learn some things. We're trying to do a little homeschooling as well, and just doing what we can. And he's a handful, but makes things in this self-quarantine situation or self-extreme social distancing, I'm calling it, just a joy and having a lot of fun doing it. Just to spend some time with him without any distractions or having to go somewhere or running to a ball game or whatever. We're just having a good time teaching him to cook. We're just learning a whole new set for him, a skill set, maybe a little earlier than he may have wanted to or even I would have anticipated, but we're making the best of a bad situation. I implore you to do the same. God bless, folks. Have a great day from all of us here at The Box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky.
You've been listening to The Box, powered by Mingy Beef Jerky. We hope you enjoyed the show and invite you to come back next week. For The Box, I'm Jenna Birmingham.